Hi, I'm Mayor Jim Darling. This is Meeting with the Mayor. Today we have a special guest, Bobby Guerra, State Representative from District 41. Welcome, Bobby.
Howdy, how are you doing, Mayor?
I'm doing great. You look like you're doing good. Everything's going good?
Well, usually we do this up there at City Hall, so this is a little different, but I think everything is very different these days. But overall, I'm very blessed.
Yeah, and congratulations on your re-election. That's
Thank you
great
very
news.
much.
You're in my district, so you are my state rep, so I'm proud to have you on the show. And you know, you certainly do good and represent our district. I'm proud that you're my state rep there. So
well, we try our very best, Mayor, and you know, I'm always open to listening to your concerns and constituents' concerns and moving forward.
Now, we have a new speaker, so let's talk about committees in this new legislative session. You were on public health, I think, and state affairs, two very important commissions, public health especially. Do you think you'll stay? Now you have another term of what do you call it? Another term of seniority under your belt. So what are you looking for as far as appointments with a new speaker?
Well, you know, we're not going to be presumptive in that regard. Chairman Phelan is my chair in state affairs, which is really the granddaddy in many respects in the Texas legislature and state affairs, because in state affairs we deal with so many issues. In fact, as most of the members on state affairs use their seniority to get on that committee. I was blessed in that last session. The speaker appointed me to that. It was a fascinating committee. And Chair Phelan did an excellent job, and he's a very common sense type of guy. And I don't mean to correct you, but as a formality, he's the speaker elect. The first thing we do when we go back mid-January, first thing we do in the House of Representatives is elect the speaker.
Yeah, but I'm aware of that, and I didn't mean to. You're right. He said in the paper he had all the votes locked up, and I just was, I always wondered how that happened.
He does have all the votes locked up, and I'm one of his big supporters. And I know he's going to do great things for the state of Texas, especially with the pandemic we have going on. On public health, I've been on public health going on for 8 years now. And it's another workhorse committee, and especially this coming session, given the pandemic we have here in Texas and across the United States.
Well, that's interesting. I would think that if it was your preference, you might have a kind of a great chance of getting back on public health for sure, and probably state affairs, and two very important committees. So let's talk about public health a little bit, and you know how it changes everything. Number one is the budget. I read reports $5 billion short. You got, the state still has some COVID money, but sales tax is still going to be down until for sure. I would think until early next year when we actually have a vaccine, et cetera. And then for the same thing for oil and gas, and severance taxes is way down. So Texas sales tax and severance taxes are the big source of revenue, and doesn't look like they're going to come back. So what do you think about passing a budget? What's that going to look like?
Well, Mayor, you're exactly correct that the budget's going to be huge. I know that the legislators on the appropriations in the House are already meeting to go over things, and there's $4.6 billion shortfall that we have going into the session. So that's going to be a huge thing. Quite frankly, it's going to be budget. There's not going to be near as many bills passed this coming session. And healthcare is going to be absolutely huge. So we have the budget issues, and we have a constitutional mandate that the legislature is supposed to pass a budget, and we have to do that, and we will. But we have to pass a realistic budget. But unfortunately, we are going through some real budgetary constraints. I will say this much, as we all know, most of us know, and Mayor, you know this, is that we relied great heavily on the rainy day fund. Rainy day fund is basically monies that are set aside from oil and gas revenues for the state of Texas. Oil and gas revenues, as we all know, have taken a real dip. I have been saying this all along. We have got to find an additional revenue source. We cannot continue to just rely on the oil and gas revenues for much of our state's budget. I mean, we get different taxes and different things of that nature, but the big one is oil and gas revenues that we get off of oil and gas. So we've got to find another revenue source, and Senator Nelson and I talked about this, so we'll be working on that.
Well, you know, I mean, your sales tax is already with the city. It's capped. It's 8.25%. So you're pretty well one of the highest in the country, I think. So you're looking at income tax, which is you won't never get reelected. I mean, it's kind of not even on the board, I think, with anybody. So you have to look at maybe gambling. You know, I think the opposition to gambling was kind of inconsistent since we have this lottery, one of the biggest lotteries in the country. And then maybe marijuana. I don't know what else there is really. I mean, when you take a look at it, the big three would be income tax, and then a couple of the sin taxes, if you will, gambling and
Well, Mary, you're right. I mean, Texans have been taxed to death. All of us are tired of that. And so again, additional revenue sources are going to be extremely important. And yes, indeed, there's been some discussion about possible gambling. But if we're going to go down that road, we've got to do it responsibly. And we have to do it in a way that makes sense. That makes sense in Texas, and make sure that we safeguard those sensitive areas, because there are those that are definitely against gambling, but as we know, it goes on. So these are things we need to explore. We'll be exploring all of these issues as we move along this next session. I don't know what the answer is going to be. We're hearing a lot of things. That's why we have a legislative session. That's why we sit down in these committees and we talk about these things and try to do things that make sense for Texans.
And Bobby, last session, didn't we went into the rainy day fund for education, I think to a tune of about $2 billion, if I'm not mistaken. I maybe have that wrong, but I think we did go into the rainy day fund for several purposes last session.
Well, last session we added $11.5 billion to public education, which was badly needed. We gave teachers a pay raise, and of course we gave a 13th check to retired teachers. We need to continue to invest in our children, because they're our futures, we all know. And we're going to continue to fight this COVID plague, but one of these days we're going to get ahead of the game on that. But we cannot forget our students. They're our future. They're really, our students are our economic driver for the state of Texas's future. I am convinced of that. Most of us are products of public education. I owe basically my career to public education. My mother was a principal for many, many years. She was on the Board of Regents of Pan American University. And so it was driven home into me. I remember as a child, and voting was a huge thing. Going into those big machines, those big box machines, and I go in with my parents, and I thought it was so cool, like Wizard of Oz, that hit that lever and that curtain would close, and they'd do all these magic things and come out and says, we voted. Driven home. So we have to continue to drive those issues home to our kids.
I like the shoot machines, but you've been a big advocate for education your whole career, and not only as a lawyer, et cetera, but also as a state representative. So I imagine you're one of the ones that people look to in the legislature for some advice as it relates to that.
Well, this morning I had a meeting, a Zoom meeting with many superintendents from smaller school districts throughout the state of Texas. And we talked a lot about these issues. Big school districts, small school districts, both have their unique issues, and we're trying to find the answers to those issues.
Very challenging. One of the challenges too is, dealing with the COVID activity, the president left it up to the states. And then you had different states do all kinds of different things. And we had kind of a give and take in Texas, especially early on. And some of the restrictions and all that. Do you think the legislature should or will deal with some of those issues as it relates to mandates?
Well, let's talk about Medicaid expansion. When I started in the Texas legislature, Governor Perry was a governor, and he made it very clear, I don't want to hear about Medicaid expansion. So what are we going to do? My very first session, I was very proud of it. It was my very first bill. I passed the 1115 waiver in the House of Representatives. Basically what that bill does, what it did was take counties that did not have hospital districts, right? But, it had health departments in their counties, take indigent dollars and leverage those dollars and bring down twice as much money from the federal government. It was not Medicaid expansion by any stretch, but it was a tremendous shot in the arm for our local hospitals here. And that bill was passed for 4 different counties: Cameron, Hidalgo, Webb. What I'm saying is that 1115 waiver is going away, and we've got to continue to, I think, some form of Medicaid expansion for healthcare is going to be huge. Those are federal dollars that we're giving up. Other states have incorporated some type of Medicaid expansion, and I think these are going to be issues that we're going to be exploring this next session, given this COVID-19 pandemic. We have to do something. Our hospitals are drowning. Many hospitals throughout Texas, quite frankly, are closing, and people are left without health care. We can't continue to operate this way.
Yeah, especially in the Valley, when you look at it, the average hospital receives 80% of the revenue is Medicare or Medicaid, in which are lower in reimbursements than traditional insurance ones. And many of them are more Medicaid than even Medicare from that standpoint. So yeah, I understand that. And it's with the federal government, it gets very complicated, and it really is. And it's in Texas, especially during legislative session, a lot of things go on between big hospital areas and smaller hospital areas, and all those, trying to balance that. Well, good luck on that one. That's a lot of work.
Well, and it's going to be a lot of work, but Texans deserve a response and answers from legislators, the senators and the state representatives. We've got to come together. And I think, quite frankly, in many respects, this COVID pandemic, let me just say this much. When I first started my first session, it was a very, very contentious first 2 sessions. This, and I'm praying, and all indications, this is going to be, in many, many respects, we're going to be moving forward in a nonpartisan fashion. We're going to come together, Republicans and Democrats, working together. I've already spoken to many of my colleagues to move Texas forward and not fight about stupid things. Things such as bathroom bills, things such as show me your papers bills. We got some huge issues we've got to deal with in Texas. We don't have time for those, quite frankly, what I consider song and dance games. We've got some serious issues we've got to deal with, and we need to move in that fashion. And the indication I'm getting from my fellow representatives throughout the rest of the state, because I talk to them all the time, is we're going to do it. We're going to move together in a very bipartisan fashion.
Local control has always been an issue. In last session, we took away the ability to annex from cities and taxes and all those things. With the COVID, there was kind of a dichotomy between local jurisdictions, especially county judges, dealing with mandates, curfews, et cetera, and then what the governor wanted. In fact, El Paso, who's under a huge COVID crisis right now, there's lawsuits against them enforcing what they should be. You think that'll be addressed with the governor? And I thought the governor at the end backed off of some things and was very responsive to that. And I know he had pressure. But what do you think? Is that a local control? Is it a governor, or is it a combination of things?
I think it's going to be a combination of many things. Many of my colleagues, like the El Paso delegation, El Paso is going through a nightmare right now. And I've spoken to those members over there. Other parts of the state are beginning to really feel this, where, at the beginning, we felt this really. And what concerns me, of course, we do have, family get-togethers, which are going to be wonderful, but we've got to proceed in a very responsible fashion. There's not going to be much appetite for real divisive issues, Mayor. We've got a huge pandemic we've got to deal with, and we've got budgetary concerns. We've got to come to the table. And what I'm hearing is that this session, not near as many bills are going to be heard or passed. And we've got too many, in the past, we've dealt with so many silly bills, in my opinion, that ate up much of our time. We don't have time for that. Texans are looking to us for common sense solutions and to move forward in a bipartisan fashion.
With 5,000 or 6,000 bills every session, you think every 2 years, well, is there 5,000 things that need correction or whatever it is? It's always astounding. And with that many bills, sometimes it's easier to slip some bad stuff through there because everybody's concentrated on so much instead of, quantity instead of quality.
Well, that's right. That's always been my philosophy. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I don't focus on large numbers of bills. I focus on quality bills. Right. That's what I've always tried to focus on. There are some members that will file 80 somewhat bills. And during the session, they're running around like crazy trying to have all their bills heard by the various committees. But at the end of the day, they get very few bills passed. That's not the way I operate. I want to focus on real common sense solutions and bills that really have a lot of meaning. This next session, though, I understand, there's some members that are still already filing a bunch of bills. At the end of the day, that's why our speakers can be so important.
Right.
Because the speaker will select the committee chairs. The committee chairs are going to be the ones that vet what bills are actually heard and what bills are voted out of committee.
Well, I think yesterday was the day for pre-filing bills. And so by the time the speaker gets around to being elected and everything in January, you're going to have thousands, I guess, of bills pre-filed. Hopefully they'll get out to people and say, a lot may hurt you instead of help you, because you're going to lose a choice of how many you get to decide, and we'll decide which ones. So.
Mayor, there's a lot of truth to that, and I take that to heart. But that's been my philosophy all along. Right. I'm not into quantity. I'm into quality bills.
Well, Bobby, I know you're careful, and same thing in family. We're not having the same family Thanksgiving and don't plan to have one on Christmas. Well, how about the Capitol? Will it be open to the public? Will there be restrictions on who can come in? Will the lobbyists have to do all their work at the expensive restaurants downtown, or how's that all going to work?
My understanding, of course, a lot of that is up in the air right now, but my understanding is it's people are not going to be able to just walk into representatives' offices, which in many ways is not really a good thing, but we've got to deal with this pandemic. There's going to be restrictions, a number of people coming into the Capitol. My understanding, they're talking about passes. I know that the lobbyists come, they'll just walk in. They're going to have appointments, and they're going to have passes. For the general public, I know that in the House of Representatives, when we get sworn in, usually it's a real big pomp and circumstance thing. There's people up in the gallery. My understanding is there will be nobody allowed in the gallery breathing on top of us, so to speak. I know the House administration and the House of Representatives has already purchased a robot that will go around shooting UV rays, okay? So this is what I understand. I know that there's been acrylic dividers that have been put up in some of the meeting rooms. So it's going to be a whole new creature for all of us.
Well, it's tough. I do a lot of meetings on Zoom and all that, and the efficiency, I think, goes down at least 40% on any of the meetings, especially when you have a committee meeting where, many people want to talk and there's a discourse of ideas. And so good luck on that.
I know, Mayor, and all we can do is we all need to try to be safe. We all need to try to be healthy. We need to be responsible, but at the same time, life can't stop, and we've got to do the best we can. We're going to get through this. Texans are resilient, and I believe we're going to get through this. Unfortunately, it's going to be very painful for many families, and my heart goes out. I've lost some very good friends. Recently, a former city commissioner of Mission just passed away, and I can go on and on down the line.
When it first started, nobody knew anybody that had it. And then everybody kind of knew somebody had it. And now every family or every person has either a very close friend or a family member who's died from it. And it's kind of, it really brings it home. And it's a terrible, terrible disease. You know, I'm going to close, but I want to thank you for being part of the Valley delegation. I think when our state reps and senators go up to Austin and we go up united, very proud of your service in that group, and you all do a great job.
Well, thank you, Mayor. You know, those are words I'll take to heart, because sometimes not everybody feels that way by the time we get done. But I will tell you this much: I'll continue to do the best I can for my constituents and for the state of Texas. And we need to move mano a mano, abrazo a abrazo, moving forward together. And thank you, Mayor. God bless you, and thank you for the City Commission for what you all do. I know y'all get together all of the time. You're trying to, you know, run a city government. Y'all are doing a great job, and give my best to all the commissioners, and God bless.
Well, thank you, Representative. Good to see you again, and look forward to seeing you when the COVID gets over in a more enjoyable setting.
Well, hopefully I'll see you before the COVID's over, but
Absolutely.
in a safe setting. Take care, Mayor.
Thank you. And this has been your meeting with the mayor. Thank you very much.